This story is why you should never mess with Ouija boards. We moved into my dad's girlfriend's house where one of her daughters lived upstairs, my brother lived upstairs, her other daughter lived down in the basement, along with me who lived in a makeshift room in the basement. One night, me and her 2 daughters decided to buy an Ouija board. After my dad and his girlfriend went to bed, me and her daughters all went downstairs, grabbed a bunch of candles, set up the Ouija board, and grabbed a bunch of our great-grandparents' stuff. We wanted to see if any of our great-grandparents would talk to us. We were so excited because the Ouija board was working and things were moving it. We asked what the spirit's name was, expecting it to be one of our great-grandparents, but it said its name was Tick. T-I-C. We asked it to repeat it again, and it spelled out T-I-C. We knew that it wasn't one of our great-grandparents. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of why you should never do an Ouija board. So after it said its name was Tick, we asked how old it was. The spirit responded with 9 years old. We asked what gender it was. There was no response. We knew for sure at this point we were not talking to one of our great-grandparents. I wanted to stop right then and there. I was really freaked out and I knew that we weren't talking to something good, but my older stepsister wanted to keep going. So out of peer pressure, of course, I kept going. She asked if it was human. Its response was no. We asked if we were safe. The spirit said yes, but I really didn't feel safe. We asked if the spirit was stuck in the house. The response was yes. The next thing my older stepsister asked, which I really wish she didn't, is if Tick was the only one there with us. The response was no. 60 seconds is not enough time for this story, and the story is really long, so stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 to the Ouija board story, and why you should never use an Ouija board. So my older stepsister asked if Tick was the only one there with us. The answer was no. She asked if all the spirits there with us were good spirits. The Ouija board said no. Right as we asked that, the bathroom was right behind us and we heard a huge loud slam in the bathroom. All of us were really freaked out just sitting there not knowing what to do. The candles started flickering. There was so much tension in the room. I have never felt anything like it. That is when my other stepsister screamed at the top of her lungs and told me to move. She saw a black hand approaching from behind me and was gonna grab my face. Because she screamed so loud, my dad woke up and we heard him, so we said goodbye really quickly. I went upstairs really quick to calm my dad down and say everything was fine. But after that night, we awoke something and a lot more things happened. Stay tuned for part 4. This is part 4 of the Ouija board. So after we used the Ouija board, we definitely awoke something in the house. The energy downstairs was so intense that none of us could sleep down there. Because of this, me and my older stepsister slept upstairs for literally weeks. Remember the shadow of the hand that wrapped around my face in part 3? Well, that hand didn't disappear. My stepmom said she saw it multiple times when she would go downstairs and change the laundry. It got to the point where her and my dad didn't even want to go downstairs. The cat would chase things that weren't even there. Doors would slam. Floorboards would creak at night. My dad would constantly see my cat chasing a figure, and all you could see was the figure's spine. It would run on all 4s. The hauntings got so bad that my dad decided that we needed to move out. Ever since then, nobody has lived in that house for longer than 2 months. On my scary childhood stories. After my dad remarried, we moved into a blue house, and me and my stepsister shared a room. Right when we moved in, I already knew something was off about that house. It was just kind of creepy. I got weird vibes from it. Nothing really happened within the first couple months of living there until winter hit. Keep in mind, this was like during when I was 14 and 15. Me and my stepsister's room was right below the attic, and at night we used to hear footsteps up there. These weren't footsteps coming from an animal, they were more footsteps coming from heavy boots hitting the ground. I told my dad about it, and so he had an exterminator come over and check it out. When the exterminator came, he found no animals up there, and no holes in which animals could get through. But that didn't stop the footsteps every single night. My dad didn't want me and my sister going up there, so one day when he was gone, we went up there by ourselves and found some really creepy things. Stay tuned for part 2. This is part 2 of the attic series. After the exterminator came and found no animals or places where animals could get into, me and my stepsister decided to go up into the attic after my dad had left. When we went up there, it was filthy. The first thing that we noticed were hangers, and they were hanging clothes and belts from the ceiling. The weird thing is the clothing didn't look that gross, and it looked like it hadn't been up there for very long. The energy up there just felt very intense, and we wanted to get out of there right away. The footsteps didn't stop after the exterminator came or after we went up there. We believe after we went up there, we made the spirit angry because weird things started to happen. The lights in the hallway used to turn on and off all the time, even though no one was upstairs because my parents lived downstairs. There'd be footsteps in the hallway, and when we would check, no one would be there. I can't fit everything in 60 seconds, so stay tuned for part 3. This is part 3 of the attic series. One night around 2 o'clock, my brother's door slammed. Take for granted he wasn't home. And then all of the lights in the entire upstairs turned off all at once. A couple seconds later, we heard this old man say hello outside of our door. We started screaming at the top of our lungs, and my dad came upstairs. He turned all the lights back on for us, and once he went back downstairs, the lights turned back off. We also used to sneak out of our windows a lot and leave them open, so when we got back, we could just climb right through, but when we come back, they would be shut. Our beds were pretty much right next to each other. There was just a little walkway in between, and if one of us would wake up in the middle of the night, we could feel a presence standing over us. The footsteps in the attic also never stopped. Comment if you want to hear more scary stories.
In high school, I had a friend who lived in this old, small apartment building. And on the first floor was this old guy named Dave who had apparently lived in the building forever. And no one really knew what Dave's deal was. The only time people saw him is when he walked outside to walk his tiny dog. But other than that, he never left his apartment. He had a nephew who delivered him groceries once a week. My friend just assumed that Dave was too old or had some sort of sickness that prevented him from leaving the house. One day, my friend was coming home from school and Dave's nephew was leaving the apartment building. And my friend is really sweet, so she was like, "Hey, I know Dave sometimes has troubles getting out of the house, so if you ever need me to go over there and bring him something, let me know. I'm always happy to help." And the nephew looked really shocked and terrified. He was like, "No, you should never go over to Dave's ever." And then he got really awkward and he was like, "Okay, gotta go, bye." And then a few weeks later, my friend was coming home from a Halloween party late at night. And when she got inside her apartment building, Dave's door on the first floor was wide open and it was pitch black inside his apartment. But then she heard something behind her. So my friend hears something behind her, but it's pitch black. She's like, "Hello?" And then she finds the switch to the hallway lights, turns them on, and Dave is standing right there with a small dog. She's like, "Hey Dave, you kind of scared me." And Dave was like, "Oh, sorry, I was looking for the light switch myself." But that didn't make any sense because he wasn't standing anywhere close to the switch, and he'd been living in that apartment building for 30 years. So she starts walking up the stairs, and then Dave says, "I've been working on a project that I'm really excited to show you." And my friend's like, "Oh, like an art project?" And Dave's like, "Yeah, kind of." And she's like, "Okay, well maybe my mom and I can come by another time to see it." And then they say goodnight, but she just feels pretty weird about the whole interaction. A few months later, she's at school and she gets a text from her mom that she has to work late and won't be home to make dinner. That afternoon, my friend walks home, walks up the stairs to her apartment building, goes to unlock the door, but then realizes the door's already unlocked. But then, all of a sudden, all the lights switch off. She tries to switch all the lights back on, but they're not working anymore. And all of a sudden, she's finding it really hard to breathe. She's afraid she might faint, so she kneels down onto the floor. Then suddenly, she feels sharp nails running through her back. And she tries to move, but she feels so weak that she can't. She turns around to see who it is, but before she can, she blacks out. The next thing she remembers is waking up in a hospital bed, and her mom is sitting next to her looking really worried. Her mom's like, "Everything's okay, there's a carbon monoxide leak in the apartment," and she passed out. The nurse is like, "In the next few weeks, you might feel tired or sluggish or have hallucinations. Don't worry, that's totally normal." And my friend is like, "What about the back scratches?" Her mom's like, "What are you talking about?" So she runs to the bathroom, pulls up her hospital gown, and there are 4 dark scratches. When she comes back to the bathroom, her mom is concerned. She goes home. There's also something else in the room. She lives on the first floor. And they've been cleaning out the apartment. And it might freak you out, but I feel like you should know about it. Mom tells her that her friend is really box open in the closet. And inside that box, there are pictures of her and her dog, pieces of her, a pair of shoes that she thought she had lost. And the nurses think that the scratches are from when she fainted, but she's sure she felt someone scratching her back, and she's sure that it was the ghost of Dave.